Hey everybody, it's Ed. Welcome back to the channel. I've gotten a lot of questions recently on the reason why I really have been recommending the Note Air 5C from BOOX over the Go 10.3 Gen II Lumi. There are several reasons why I suggest one over the other. Now, all of this comes down to use case. All of it comes down to your own workflow, your own preferences. So I want to say that in the outset. But I think if you're making a decision about an e-ink device out of the gate and what you want it to be able to do, you really have to think through the trade-offs you're going to have to make on both of these devices. And to say they're the same or to say that they're comparable the same to other devices is a little hard to do. I mean, not just dealing with color. Color is its own thing, but in my particular way of thinking, color isn't necessarily a negative when you consider all of the other things on the Note Air 5C. But we're going to go ahead, we're going to dig into it. I'm going to tell you why I think the way I do. I'm going to talk a little bit about my actual use case for these devices, and then I'm going to talk about why I see the Note Air 5C as BOOX's top of the line model in that 10 to 11 inch space. So let's go ahead and jump into it and we will take a look at both devices. All right, so here we have the Note Air 5C over on my left and we have the Lumi on my right. Now you will notice that on the Note Air 5C, and I've got these pins reversed right now, you'll notice I'm using the standard BOOX pin. That's only because I got one of the original units that had the issue of not being able to use the pin that came with this device in a really meaningful way because of how the magnets are placed. But quite frankly, that pin does write very good and it is really good. And if you buy this unit today, they fixed those magnet placements. So just wanted to throw that out there. But I've got the front light on both of these right now a little bit, and I'm actually going to turn it down on the Lumi a little bit more because of the fact that that screen is naturally bright and I have lights here. If I do that on the Note Air 5C, you're going to see that if I go to off, it gets very dark. So we are going to leave it on my custom setting just to keep these pretty close to how you would actually use them in everyday life. So we'll just go into a quick note here and we'll say create, and then we will go into a handwritten note on this side. And we will say create. And one thing you're going to notice right away with this is the ghosting performance. There's a lot of ghosting over here on the Lumi. There is virtually none over here on the Note Air 5C. You'll notice a lot of the ghosting here. There is no ghosting over here, even though we did the process the same way. And one thing about this particular device here is you can do the side gesture, which I don't have set up, but I have it with my nav ball. So now I go ahead, I clear that out. All that ghosting is gone. But that's a real issue for me on this device, and it isn't all the time. And I noticed that when Voya did a ghosting comparison between the BOOX 10.3 and the Supernote Manta, that the 10.3 did better. Now, one thing I will say is that depends on where you're coming from. When you're within a notebook, the 10.3 actually does an excellent job of not showing ghosting and cleaning that up while you're in the notebook. The hard part is that as you go from the main interface to a notebook, it leaves all those remnants and you have to go ahead and refresh the screen. Note Air 5C doesn't have that problem. And part of that is because of the BOOX Super Refresh technology and the fact that this is running with more RAM, more dedicated memory, and it just has a better experience and snappier experience right out of the gate. Again, they're both great devices, but this particular device has some downsides to it, one being that ghosting. So that's the first one. Other than that, they're very comparable. They both have a front light. They both have a quad-core processor. And I'm going to go ahead and switch over real quick and kind of show you what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the difference in spec. Because a lot of people like to say these are exactly the same and the only difference is color. And that's not quite the case. So let's go ahead and look at these specs side by side. Here you go with what you have on each device, and you are going to see a lot of similarities. I mean, right here you see that they're both 10.3 inch. They have the same screen. They have the same same resolution at 300 ppi. Now, the Note Air 5C does have that CFA layer, which is going to make the contrast different between it and the Lumi. So you are going to have a difference there. You're also going to have both of them with the front lights, so that screen gap is going to be a little more noticeable because of just the way that it looks on the 10.3, but it's virtually the same. They're both running Android 15. They both have the octa-core CPU. The Lumi has an active pen instead of the EMR technology. The Note Air 5C has obviously EMR. Also, the Note Air 5C can support the magnetic keyboard cover as well as the origami case, which comes with it, which you don't have on the Go 10.3. You do have a nice cover, but it's just different. They both have a front light. They both have the same battery. They both have a magnetic Snap 2 stylus, and they both have a magnetic case, one being the origami case, which I like a lot on the Note Air 5C. And then they're a little bit different in weight. I mean, the Note Air 5C is heavier, but you'll also see that it is shorter. So it's the same screen, but the profile on these is a little bit different. You have a larger bezel on the left side of the Note Air 5C and a wider chin on the Lumi. Now, if you go to the full specs, that's where you begin to see even more differences in detail. And these are the things that I think get missed. They are octa-core, both of them, but the Note Air 5C has BSR, so that helps with that ghosting. One is active, one is EMR. The Note Air 5C has 2 more gigabytes of RAM than the Lumi, so that does increase your performance. It allows it to be more of a multitasker and do more things. Bluetooth is the same. They both have a G sensor. They both have warm and cold front lights. The other big piece here, though, comes in when you go down to the bottom here where it says others. And why they're under others gives me a little bit of pause because these are really important. So they both have dual speakers. They both have a built-in microphone. But when you get over here to the Note Air 5C, you're going to notice that it has a micro SD card slot, which allows you to expand the storage. And that's a big deal. It changes how much you can actually store on this device. Now, if you're just reading books or you're just taking notes, that's not as big a deal. I've had my Supernote for a long time, and I've had these BOOX devices for a long time, and I don't find myself running into the storage cap. However, if you were doing a lot of productivity tasks, and if you were daily driving the Note Air 5C as if it were a laptop or a full-on Android tablet replacement, you could really load it up with apps, documents, and all kinds of things that could hit that storage cap. So having the ability to be able to expand that storage is really important on a device that is mimicking either a laptop or an Android tablet or an iPad with multiple apps and different document capacities on it. And then finally, I think the big deal is for a lot of people, and this one not so much for me, but if you did have sensitive information, the Note Air 5C actually has a fingerprint reader. And so when you hold that power button, it's going to automatically recognize your fingerprint and unlock. You don't have to worry about typing in a passcode or anything like that. And the last thing, besides the specs, besides the ghosting, for me, and this is a personal thing in a lot of ways, it's subjective in some ways, is the writing experience. So I've been on record for a long time saying that the active capacitive pens are getting better. They are not as good, in my opinion, as an EMR pen. And it's not just the line wobble. It's actually the fact that EMR pens are much more cross-compatible and you can use different pens. You can do that on USI or active Styli. The biggest issue there is that you'd never know for sure if it's going to work. You don't know if one active pen from one manufacturer or that you bought off Amazon is going to work as well as another until you get it in your hands and you can test it. And that's occasionally the case on EMR, but very rarely. Most EMR styli, the minute you get them, are going to work, just like they always have. But to me, the bigger thing besides that is the actual InkSense Plus stylus itself. while a nice pen compared to a lot of the others. It has a side button, but it's metal, and that metal is very slippery. Whereas the EMR stylus on books has these grips, and even the plastic on the pen that came with this device has less of a smooth feel, and it grips really well, and it doesn't cause any fatigue. So to me, that's a big deal. I really enjoy writing with the EMR stylus more. And I personally think that they look different. Now, again, this part's being subjective. So if I'm on the calligraphy pen on both of these, I'm going to go ahead and turn them both so that I can write on them more comfortably. And let's just write the same thing. So we'll say hello, and we'll go ahead and do that. And then we'll come over here and we will do the same thing. And we'll write that. Now, I don't know if you notice or not, but some of the loops trail off here. You'll notice here that I got a little bit more of a loop there. And another thing to think about here is that you really should, due to the contrast levels here, this should be crisper, should be sharper, and really, although for my poor writing, it isn't. You get a lot of really good lines here, and they're actually better than you get over on the other side. And I think that especially when you pump this contrast level up over on the Note Air 5C, you see you can get it every bit as bright as you can on the Go 10.3. And I think when you do that and you put these side by side, you're going to see that line wobble, and you can see that happen. Not that it's awful. I do like this. But look at my K there. It's missing something. Whereas if I come over here and I write, I like this, you're going to have very consistent strokes. Now, again, I'm writing around a microphone, and there are some things that just aren't going to be beautiful just because of my writing. I just really felt that it was important that I address kind of why I don't think, if you say that this is a better device or is BOOX' top of the line, that means that this necessarily has to be. I don't think that's the case. And I don't think that either of these are bad devices. And if you know you want black and white, you know that this is the device you want. You know that if you want color, you know this is the device you want. You know if you need EMR, this is the device you want. If that's not as important to you and black and white trumps that, this is the device you want. So there's a lot of nuance in these decisions. I don't want someone thinking, well, if someone says the Note Air 5C is better than another black and white device, then that means that this is better. That's not necessarily the case because they're not the same devices. They are different, and it's important to understand how they're different. All right, everybody. So why did I make this video? Well, I made this video for a couple of reasons. One being that there's been a lot of talk about how active pen technology is exactly the same as EMR. And I don't agree with that. I'm not saying that it's an awful technology. I think it's come a long way. I think that actually the writing experience on the Lumi and the 10.3 Gen 2 is very good. It's not as good to me as the original 10.3. It's not as good as the Note Max. It's not as good as the Note Air 5C. It's not as good as the Super Note. Any of those EMR technologies to me are going to win every time. And it's not just the writing feel and the experience, but it's also everything from the feel of the nib on the screen to the cross-compatibility of EMR devices. And so I think it's really important that when we think about it, we think through all of that. Now, would I think that the Note Air 5C is to the Lumi? I really don't think so for several reasons, and I've outlined them throughout this video, but I'll recap them here. One's EMR, which we've already talked about. Another is the origami case that comes with the Note Air 5C, and the ability to have a keyboard case that takes advantage of the pogo pens, which are also on the Note Air 5C. So I think that the fact that you have both of those options, whether it's a keyboard case or an origami case to help you stand that up, I think that is a winner all day long. And I think that the fact that the Note Air 5C has expandable storage, that's huge. That's a big deal. And the fingerprint reader, to a lesser extent for me, but for a lot of people, is also a very big deal. And then finally, And this is where it kind of the rubber meets the road in some ways. You had the expandable storage, which is a huge bonus, but then you also have an extra 2 gigabytes of RAM in the Note Air 5C, which does increase the versatility and the power of that system to handle multitasking apps, all of those things you may need. And another thing that is, a deal breaker or a small thing to some people is the color. It is a nice to have if you think you might end up needing it. So if you look at these two devices side by side with the Note Air 5C and the Lumi, the Note Air 5C to me is the best in class for what BOOX has to offer. It has color if you need it. It has higher RAM. It has expandable storage. It has EMR. It has an origami case. It has the ability to add a keyboard case directly to it with pogo pins. And to me, that's just why it's best in class. And all of that I just said, for $70 more. So if you're already spending over $400 on a tablet and you have a need for a front light, to me, the obvious choice would be the Note Air 5C over the Lumi. And I wouldn't have said that when I was talking about black and white, non-front lit devices. I used to always say, and was very consistent in saying, that if I didn't have the Supernote Manta, I would have the BOOX Go 10.3, the original. I think that it's the closest in form factor and in elegance and in productivity to the Manta at the black and white with an EMR. And at the time, I used to compare it more to my A5X, which wasn't expandable. The Manta won out because you could expand the storage. It's modular. It's got all those other advantages. But if I was in the BOOX ecosystem, I would still choose the original Go 10.3 over the Gen 2, personally, unless you need a front light. If you need a front light, the Lumi is a great device. It works really well. But the Note Air 5C, to me, just blows it out of the water. So let me know what you think. Do you think I'm way off base? Do you think that I'm right? I think these are both great devices, but I think when it comes down to it, the Note Air 5C just has so many more pros than it does cons. The only thing you're sacrificing is some contrast and if you want color or not. Those are the two main drivers. In every other way, it beats the Lumi for me. But let me know down in the comments. I appreciate your thoughts as always. Please use my affiliate links if you're considering purchasing one of these devices or any e-ink device. We've reached over 5,000 subscribers, over 1 million views. I can't thank you all enough for that. And I still answer every comment, every question. So please feel free to reach out. But until next time, thank you so much for being here. Keep on moving forward, and I will talk to you soon. Bye now.